Hi, we're going to read Runt Chapter 14. King took the lead, and the rest of the pack followed in their usual order. The adults set a steady pace, but the pups' legs had grown long enough over the summer that they were able to keep up. The pack moved silently, crossing the stream and angling off in the direction Raven had shown them, their noses testing the air. King was the first to pick up the scent. He stopped abruptly. "There," he told the others. "Just there. Close." Sniffer got it next. "There," she echoed in a high, excited voice. And then the rest, including Runt, could smell it too. They circled around King, touching his nose, wagging their tails, savoring the rich, good smell of moose. "There," the breeze told them. "Just there." "Come," King said again, and they moved out in the same unerring line. After a short distance, King called out, "The edge of the woods, in the long grass, lying down." The message passed down the line. "At the edge of the woods, in the long grass, lying down." "If he refuses to run," King commanded, "drop back. The ones who hold their ground are young and strong. We don't want to fight." And King's words passed along the line, and this time accompanied by Biter's muttering. "We're hungry," Biter complained. "Don't tell us to give up before we've begun." Runt heard it all, his father's words and Biter's complaints. He didn't know which one he should listen to. He too was hungry, he knew that. The wolves ran full out until the scent they pursued was overwhelming. Then suddenly King slowed, and the pack slowed behind him. They crouched lower, moving with more deliberate steps, their heads thrust forward. "Moose! Moose!" The scent sang in Runt's brain as it sang for every other wolf in the pack. "There," King said, and the word passed along the line too. "There, there, there. Moose is there." And then an enormous creature came crashing to his feet, rising out of the long grass where he'd been lying. It was a bull moose, full-grown, enormous. Would he stand? Would he fight? Would they return home with their bellies still empty and aching? For a long moment the moose remained still, peering at the approaching pack with small, nearsighted eyes, and the wolves fanned out, forming a half circle, waiting their chance. "I know," the moose's eyes said. "I know you have come to kill me, but I won't go without a fight." Runt was stunned at the size of the beast. He hadn't realized anything could be so large. And glancing at his littermates, he was certain they were as overwhelmed as he with the fellow's size, with his smell, with being part of the hunt for the first time. Sniffer trembled even as she savored the rich scent of the beast before them. Runner and leader danced forward, then back again, forward and back. Even King hesitated, sizing up the beast. Biter stepped out ahead of the rest, moving closer to their quarry. "Come on," he prodded. "Don't lose this one." And then their chance came. The moose's courage failed, and he turned and lumbered away. The pack dashed after. "It's an old one," Silver said, passing the word to the pups. "We have a chance." And watching the moose run, Runt could see what his mother meant. The huge animal carried himself with a towering dignity, but his gait was stiff. He seemed to be a bit lame on the left side, too. And though he picked up speed quickly, the wolves were easily able to match him. King and Biter jumped at the moose's rump, slashing, drawing blood in streams. Hunter and Silver ran past them. They leapt and clung to the beast's shoulder, one on each side. Helper put on a burst of speed and got in front of the giant animal's head. Then he turned back. With a lunge, he leapt to take hold of the beast's leathery nose, grabbing on, swinging free, with all 4 feet off the ground. The moose bellowed, but didn't slow his pace. Already Runt could taste the fresh meat. He longed to take hold too, anywhere. And though his heart was hammering in his chest, he pushed and pushed until he had moved past the rest of the pups and was right on the great beast's heels. He then plunged forward, grabbing the back of one leg. The next thing Runt knew, he was flying through the air, flying and landing too hard. He lifted his head, struggled to pull air into his lungs again, and from that position, flat on the ground, he observed the rest of the action. The bull moose brushed one shoulder against a slender aspen, strong and straight. Silver crashed to the ground, twisting as she fell. Then the great creature passed close to a tree on the other side. Hunter's hold was jerked free, and she too landed unceremoniously on the ground. Now only Helper had a hold, swinging from the beast's nose, and the moose continued to stagger forward. He swung his huge head, hurling the yearling wolf this way and that. Helper might have been a leafy branch buffeted by the wind. With the next sweep of the bull's enormous head, the yearling body smacked into the trunk of a tree hard. Then the moose swung his head back and drove the young wolf into an elm on the other side. Helper dropped to the ground like a rock. In the sudden silence that followed, the bull moose disappeared into the forest. Only Biter still pursued him. Silver and Hunter rose from where they had fallen. Silver limped, but she led the way toward the place where Helper lay. Runt too rose, and the pups and Hunter followed, close on their mother's heels. King joined them all. Silver sniffed Helper's face, his eyes, his ears. Then the silver wolf whimpered and stepped back. The others approached, sniffed, whimpered one after another. Helper did not stir. Only Runt stayed back. King licked his son's face just once, then turned away. "Come," he said to his family. It was an entirely different call than the one with which they had begun the hunt. Silver hesitated, looking down at her fallen son. But then she whined, sniffed Helper again, and followed her mate. Runt stood alone beside Helper's still frozen form. How could his family leave? "Come along," Hunter commanded, moving the pups forward with gentle bumps of her muzzle. "Come along." But Runt dropped stubbornly to the ground, glancing over his shoulder at his parents, who were now some distance away, walking with their heads down. His mother's limp looked bad. "We can't leave Helper here. He needs us." "Helper will never need us again," Hunter replied softly. "Now come." And she and the other pups moved off after their parents. But Runt did not come. He laid his chin across Helper's tanned chest and watched his family go. He didn't understand. If there was truly nothing they could do for his brother, then why didn't his father follow Biter and continue the hunt? Biter had been right about one thing. They were hungry. They were all hungry. Long after the rest of his family was gone, Runt lay next to his brother's still body. The light sifting through the trees grew dim, and the bright gold of Helper's steadfastly open eyes grew even dimmer. But yet Runt did not move. Flies began to settle on the golden eye with the dark lips. They crawled into Helper's ears. A turkey vulture had come to perch on a branch overhead, then another. How quickly news traveled in the forest. But Runt took little notice of any of it until Raven dropped out of a tree landing near him. Runt raised his head slowly. "Not you too," he said. "Are you waiting for me to leave so you can feast?" "Of course not." Raven ruffled his feathers the way he always did when he was offended. "I have some loyalty, you know." Runt snapped at one of the endless flies buzzing around his head, then settled his chin once more across his brother's still body. The warmth of Helper's life had slipped away. "Did Biter bring the moose down?" Runt asked. "Biter is still running," Raven replied, "trying to bring down that old bull alone. Even injured as he is now, is going to keep running for a long time. Alone. The pack should be with him. Why had his father given up so easily? Was it true that he was afraid?" Runt wanted to ask Raven, but he didn't. He knew that Raven, for all of his constant quibbling with King, would have only defend his father. In the distance, voices rose. Runt lifted his head. His family had begun a howl, a song of Helper, his life, his death. Runt pointed his nose at the fading sky, ready to join the song, but no sound came from his throat. He lowered his head, laying it across his brother's body again. After all, no one had asked him to join them. "Aren't you going home?" Raven asked. Or are you going on with Biter?" Runt considered. Those were the choices: go home where he had no gift to give, not even his voice, or joining Biter on an impossible quest. Surely no one missed him at home, and the flight he had taken off the old moose's leg had taught him how little use he would be in a hunt. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, Raven was gone. The light was gone from the forest too. Helper's body was stiff. The vultures sat like stones in the tree just above them, waiting. No doubt other forest creatures waited too, not to mention the hordes of insects and worms that had already begun silently to feast on the young wolf's body. The gift of Helper's life was returning to the forest, back to them all. As young as he was, Runt understood that. He understood, too, that there was nothing more he could do here. He rose and began plodding deeper into the forest, following the trail left by the wounded moose. Whether he could be any help in the hunt or not, at least he would find Biter. That is the end of chapter 14.